Coming up on the OSG on CFB, the College Football X. A lot of X factors this week. We catch up with one of the X factors in the Big Ten 12-14, Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers after their big win. We also catch up with another big win and another conference that's back online. It is time to catch up with Justin Allegri, the play-by-play voice of San Jose State. And it's also another round of the Stereo J-Dubs. The OSG on CFB starts right now. Kick it, Hendo.
Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, Jon Nelson, John Wood, and John Wilkerson.
Thank you, Steve Henderson, and welcome to the College Football X. I'm John Wilkerson. Aren't you glad the Big Ten Conference is back? Ohio State whooped Nebraska. That was expected. Michigan looked great against Minnesota. And then there was the unexpected. Indiana pulled off an overtime shocker, upsetting 8th-ranked Penn State 36-35. The ending of the game will be talked about for years. Here's how the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, Don Fischer, described it from Learfield, IMG.
Penix looks, he runs with it, looks to the end zone. Now he tries to run it. He tried to dive for the end zone, and I don't think he got in. And wait a second. Oh, they say he did. They say he did.
After review, the rolling on the field stands. Touchdown.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm glad I'm wrong.
Indiana wins it. 36-35. Tom Allen jumping all over down there. People jumping on him. This football team has broken a long string to the Penn State Nittany Lions. Just the second time they've beaten them in 23 meetings now. And today, in most unusual fashion.
And Don Fischer joins the College Football X. And Don, when you listen to your call of Michael Penix Jr.'s game-winning two-point conversion in the first overtime, am I interpreting this right, that you were shocked that after a lengthy review it was upheld by the replay official?
Well, my color analyst immediately said he didn't think he was in during the play call of the touchdown that was called, and when we looked at the replays of it, you could make a case for the fact that maybe he was down before the ball got to the pylon, or he didn't quite get to the pylon in time. But then there were still shots that we saw as well that looked like maybe he did break the plane before he hit the pylon. So all I can tell you is we were just happy that Indiana won the ball game, because we've lost ball games like that in the past a lot of times. I've been doing Indiana for 48 years now, and the Hoosiers very seldom get a break in that vein, and finally they got one. So we're going to take it and run.
You know, when I was seeing that, I was just wondering if only there wasn't the COVID restrictions and there was a full house in Bloomington that day, how insane that would have been.
Well, you're right about that. Indiana football, as most people know, has really struggled through the years. The Bill Maui era was, without question, his 12 years at Indiana was spectacular in the sense of how it compared with other years in years gone by and years since. And that still wasn't an era where Bill Maui had a winning record in his 12 years there. So you look at Indiana's struggles throughout the years and trying to put together a football program that could compete at the highest level, and it just hasn't happened very often. And Indiana fans have been discouraged, without question, through many of these years when they thought that they might have a pretty good football team, but they've never gotten quite the breaks. I can tell you 3 times they've gone to Michigan, had leads, had officials take the game away from them, and I know that sounds like we're crybabying about the fact that the referees had something to do with it, but they did, and it's factual. One of those years was the year that Anthony Carter scored on a 45-yard touchdown pass on the last play of the game because they threw the ball out of bounds to get a timeout that they didn't have, or to stop the clock at the end of a ball game, and the officials allowed it to stand. So all I'm telling you is we're just happy that Indiana got a win finally, and whether it was a little bit tainted or not, you can look at it how you'd like, but Indiana fans are loving it.
Well, I have a new favorite name in college football this season. And I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Whoop Philyor?
Whop Fillier.
Whop Fillier. Thank you very much, Don. Anyway, when he caught the touchdown pass in the overtime, did you get a sense that Indiana was going to go for the win right now?
Well, we didn't know for sure, but the right call was made by head coach Tom Allen, because if you looked at Indiana's defense, they had been on the field for over 40 minutes at that point in the ball game, and they were wore out. When you give the other team an opportunity to have the football for over 40 minutes, and you're trying to stop them on a consistent basis, it's a tough thing to do. And I think Tom Allen made the right call. I know he said he was just sick of being close. He wanted to win a football game, and he was going to let the chips fall where they may on that call. And I can't disagree with him at all. I think it was the right call. And obviously Indiana was the beneficiary.
Well, one of the best video clips from Saturday's game versus Penn State was on the Indiana football's Twitter page when head coach Tom Allen was addressing the team and his players began shouting, "We love you, coach." And that just crescendoed throughout the locker room. And you clearly saw how moved Coach Allen was, to the point where he jumped right into the mosh pit. I tell you, Don, that video clip really got to me. Is that a perfect example of how the Hoosier players feel about their head coach?
I don't think there's any question about it. Tom Allen, when he came to Indiana University, was the defensive coordinator for 1 year, and immediately the defense improved pretty dramatically. But you can see that Tom was a different kind of coach. He's very excitable. He's one of those guys that wears his emotions on his sleeve. And without question, the players like that. They like the way he approached it. He also came with when he got the head coaching position, when he became the head coach at the end of the next season. He had this belief that the one thing you've got to have with your players is that ability to understand this is a team game, number one, and number two, you got to play for each other as much as you play for yourself. And love each other is, LEO is what he calls it, love each other is his motto. And he lives that motto with his players. Now, he'll get after them, but I can guarantee you they all know that he really cares about them. And that's why you could see at the end how emotional it was for both players and for Tom.
We're talking with Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. Don, you lived through the last few months where the conference wasn't going to play a fall season, and all of a sudden reversed course. Going through all that, was it gratifying to actually see a game played on campus on Saturday?
Well, there's no question about that. And let's face it, we most of us in the Big Ten, and I have a really good rapport with a lot of the other broadcasters and media people. There wasn't anybody that didn't believe that the Big Ten made a mistake. In other words, they made the call to cancel the season way too early. And why they made it that way, and you've got a new commissioner, and obviously he was dealing with the pandemic and with all the problems that brings to the table. But I don't know why they made the call to cancel the season at that point when everybody else, well, I shouldn't say everybody because the Pac-12 had followed suit with the Big Ten, but the other three major conferences all decided they were going to play football, and they were going to try to do it in a way that allowed the players to be safe and to do the right things, and if the testing came out, they were not going to be able to, they were going to be quarantined, so on and so forth. So all of those things that took place there, it just didn't make sense why the Big Ten canceled, other than the fact that they were scared of the pandemic and how the other conferences were going to play, and they were going to play, and then the heat came on the commissioner and the Big Ten itself and the administrations, and next thing you know, they decide they're going to play. So, yeah, and there was a lot of frustration with the players and the coaching staffs and so on, and I think all that pressure came to bear on the Big Ten administration, and they finally just relented. Because they did get some, and the one thing that did come about, they got the immediate testing and all that kind of stuff that took place, and that followed up after that. So that allowed them to make the change, and without question, we're all happy about it.
Yeah, personally, I got to think it was tough on you to see some of your colleagues in the SEC, the Big 12, and the ACC call games while you really didn't have a game to prepare for.
Well, trust me, I've been doing this long enough, and I plan on doing it a little bit longer. So I knew that there was going to be some kind of a season, whether it was going to be a football season or a basketball season. We all want to work when we get the opportunity. We all love what we do from a play-by-play standpoint. And we were just hoping that they would change their thinking process. Obviously, that took place, and now we've got a football season, even though it's abbreviated.
Well, Saturday, Indiana heads to New Jersey to face a 1-0 Rutgers team. Now, as we record this earlier in the week, Don, I'm sure you're beginning your prep work for your broadcast. What are some keys for Indiana in that game?
Well, I do think that they've got to play much better offensively because they did not play well offensively in the game against in the game that they just won against a really good Penn State team, and yet Penn State was ranked number 8 in the country when Indiana played them. But when you only have 211 yards of offense, you've got to do something different. Now, a big part of that was Michael Penix, the redshirt sophomore quarterback, who has struggled for the last year with an injury to his shoulder. And obviously he came back and hadn't played in almost a year, literally almost a year's time, because he got hurt at the end of last season, didn't play in the final 4 games of that campaign. And so Michael's got to play better. And you saw what he can do when he's in a mode, and he was certainly in that mode the last series of the ball game and in the overtime period. He played spectacular at that point, but he played just about as badly leading up to that point in the first portions of that ball game. So he's got to get better. The offense has got to run block better. The offense has got to pass block better. And there's no question, if they don't play any better offensively than they did against Penn State and the Lions, that they'll get all they can handle against Rutgers, because Rutgers is a good football team.
So, Don, here's your chance to promote what you're doing. Where can football fans hear the broadcast?
Well, we'll be on Sirius XM, as you know, and I'm not sure how Sirius is doing it this year, because I've heard a home game or a road team have their broadcast on a home team's SXM. So Sirius XM is where you're at, but you can also pick us up on a lot of the Facebook page at IU, and obviously there are a lot of radio stations around the state of Indiana that you can tune into as well.
Well, Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, many thanks for joining us on the College Football X.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, it's the X Factor with Jon Nelson. You're listening to the College Football X.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
You are listening to the College Football X on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome back to the OSG on CFB. It is time for the College Football X. One of our X Factors is the Mountain West, and it is time to catch up with the play-by-play voice of the Spartans of San Jose State, Justin Allegri. Justin, thanks for hanging out with us and being one of our X Factors this week.
Hey, I'm happy to be on with you guys.
All right, so what was it like? Now, I'm going to go leading into the season here. What was it like from San Jose State's perspective and your perspective there on campus to watch everybody else start and still wait for a start?
Yeah, it was really tough. And there's so many angles to it, too, when you consider local government, state government, the universities as a whole, trying to make a decision that is right for the student athletes, first of all. But then, you have to think about the finances of these universities. They got to try and make money and keep their sports going. So it was tough to watch other teams make the call and start practice and get the games in, not knowing what the call was going to be for the Mountain West. Yeah, we heard, okay, it was going to be in the spring. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean it's going to be a 5-game schedule? Is it going to be in February? We don't know what that means. So I think it was more frustrating for the administration and the coaching staff from that perspective. And then, you had these varying opinions of what does the state think? Does the state think it's okay for the Pac-12 and not for the Mountain West because the Pac-12 can have more funds to test more and do more of these protocols that they feel like are safer? Who knows? Does the Santa Clara County government think that it's better suited to handle this than some county in LA or Alameda County? So there was a lot going on that it was just confusing at the time. And so we sat back and said, all right, we're not playing football until the spring. And then the Mountain West gets this contract signed to get 3 tests a week, and then it became a reality because you could rapid test. And still there were hurdles to overcome. Our team had to go to Humboldt to practice, which is a 5.5-hour drive. Because our county wouldn't let them practice 11 on 11. And then a week and a half before game time, they were okay to practice 11 on 11. And then a week before the game, we were okay to play in Santa Clara County. So there's just so much going on behind the scenes that I think it kind of gets lost in the shuffle, how much we wanted to play versus how much we needed to do in order to play.
Not to mention the forest fires that are there in the area and taking.
Yeah, there's that too.
With the bay, and I mean the pictures from a meteorological standpoint are eerie. It's very Blade Runner-y at times to create an adjective. But, I mean, you guys have had to go through one end of the car wash to the other just to get out the other side.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Blade Runner because there was one day where it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it seemed like it was 8 o'clock at night. And it was just orange and dark and gross. And that was a whole other problem too. And even then, you couldn't have those small position groups at the time. It was 5 or 4 or 5 that could practice and weightlift. That wasn't even possible because the air quality was so bad. The Northern California has been devastated. The whole state has been devastated by the wildfires, and it was just another hurdle to overcome, I guess. And fortunately, we're not dealing with that now, and everybody can get out there healthy.
So what is it like finally to get out there and make the statement that you guys did in week 1?
I was talking to my broadcast partner, Kevin Richardson, who was a linebacker at Stanford in the late 80s, and we both have been watching San Jose State football for a long time. Leading up to this game, you look at Air Force, who runs a triple option, and you figure that they're going to have the advantage simply because of scheme. It's hard to get ready for a triple option team. In a short window of time, it's even more difficult to get ready for the triple option team. And San Jose State's run defense over the last 4 or 5 years has not been good. It has been one of the things that the coaching staff has really identified as they want to improve. So with all those factors leading into this game, you were figuring the Air Force is going to come out and they were going to run the football with some effectiveness. And we looked after that game going, we've watched San Jose State the last 8 years or so, and we've seen games that have been impacted by plays from the defense, but we haven't seen games that have been won by the defense as a whole. And this was a game that the defense won. And that was so impressive to me, just to come out of the gates and play that solid for an entire game, 4 quarters worth, was really fun to watch. And hopefully it's the same trend moving to the rest of the season. We saw enough from the offense to get it done. I still think there are some holes there, but overall, with what was being dealt with off the field leading up to the game, it was pretty nice to see the product that was on the field.
All right, so handicap the Mountain West for us. Those of us who are listening on the eastern side of the Mississippi, this is where we get to kind of let everybody else know what's going on in the rest of the planet. When you look at the Mountain West this year, what do you see?
I think the teams that you expect to be at the top, the Boise States, the San Diego State, they're going to be strong. The hard part to gauge are the teams that are like San Jose State, having different hurdles to overcome. Colorado State was shut down for a little while, so they're trying to get traction and get going. We don't really know what they're going to look like. They haven't even played a game yet because their first game was canceled. Same with New Mexico, who's the Spartans will see this week. I thought Utah State would have a nicer showing up at Boise, but maybe that's just how strong Boise is this year. I know Hank Bachmeier up there is just a tremendous, tremendous quarterback. So it's kind of open. And then I look at Hawaii, too, as an interesting storyline because so many coaching changes occurred over the offseason. And that's in itself a question. How do the new coaching staffs, with the lack of spring practices and with the lack of support in the start of the season for normal practices, how do they get going? I still see Hawaii as a team that can be a good threat in the west side of things in the Mountain West Conference. But for the most part, I think we'll have to see how the first few weeks play out here and see who does come out strong out of the gates. In an 8-game season, the first 3 games are going to make a big difference.
I was going to ask, is it, traditionally when you're coming into a season, you're looking at graduation and you're thinking that one side of the ball is going to be there before the other side of the ball is. Is it the inverse this year because of all the uncertainty where you're thinking, yeah, offenses will be out there, they know what's going on, but then the defenses are the ones that step up? Is it the inverse this year, do you think?
Well, I asked our coaching staff, in a training camp, what's the last thing that comes together that you want to see? And, it's the intangibles, it's things like that. What do you want to see? And they said it's the relationship that new players, especially in the offense, have with the guys that are the veterans. And for San Jose State, Nick Starkel, who has been an SEC starting quarterback, he's the starting quarterback for the Spartans, but he didn't have those reps and those sessions over the summer working with his wide receivers, just throwing routes. And that stuff comes with time, and it's something that the Spartans didn't have the luxury of. So I think that's probably the last thing we're going to see is just the connection between the quarterback and the tight end and the wide receivers and the running backs and those little things that maybe fans overlook going into a season, but something that needs to develop, and it may take some time. And I think a lot of teams are dealing with those problems right now.
Justin Allegri, the play-by-play voice of San Jose State, hanging out with us as one of our X Factor interviews this week on the OSG on CFB. You mentioned the quarterback position when it comes to your spot shadows and all the highlights on the board and all the different colors that you make every week. Who else is in your spot shadow to make an early impact for San Jose State this year?
I like a couple of the young running backs, and the running back position, outside of the guys that we know we're going to have probably a good season, the running back position to me is going to be critical for the Spartans because the Spartans haven't run the football with effectiveness in a long time. And they've been looking for that second dimension to the offense so that they can balance out things. By all accounts, Shamar Garrett, who is a freshman coming out of De La Salle High School, a renowned high school, is really, really looking good. Now, he is on the smaller side. He is a freshman. He is a little bit raw. But to me, the skill set in terms of what he can do on the field and the impact that he can make is there. We saw it on a couple times on kick returns in the first week. He got a couple of reps as the running back. I think he can make an impact for the Spartans on the ground. So that's one guy I look forward to as a young player trying to develop over the course of the year. Guys that I know are going to be big impact players, Trey Walker, wide receiver, just tremendous talent, yards after the catch, yards after the contact. Can really, really make an impact in a game. Bailey Gaither on the other side, one of the speediest guys in the Mountain West Conference, can blow the lid off things. And then Derek Deese Jr., the tight end. All of those three weapons at Nick Starkel's disposal can really make him diversify the passing game and make the Spartans be able to move it downfield with effectiveness.
Any clue what to expect out of New Mexico? I know that study hall is a little early right now, and we're kind of in 101 as you're getting closer to 401 and getting your credits. But what are you expecting out of New Mexico this year on the whole, or is it just like Reverend Jim in Taxi? I don't know.
I mean, usually as a broadcaster in the middle of the week, we kind of get a sense of what the team's going to look like, right? You can watch a little bit of film. You can look at the game notes. You can talk to writers, reporters, broadcasters. Well, New Mexico's only been practicing in groups of 5. It's almost impossible to recognize what they're going to look like and who is going to be available to them. But the thing that I will always circle back to on this is that Rocky Long is now their defensive coordinator. And Rocky Long is a guy that will get the game plan to a spot where his personnel will know what they're doing and make an impact. He just figures it out. So, I can't tell you about personnel on the field, but I can tell you that the scheme from the defensive side, at least, is going to be a good one because it doesn't necessarily rely on getting reps on the field. It's more of a system where you can look at it and tell a player, you need to be here at this point in time. And in concept, it can work when you're not practicing 11 on 11. But for what they're going to look like, who knows at this point? Who knows?
All right, before we get into the blatant promo for the action this weekend and all season long for you guys out there in the Mountain West, man after my own heart, full disclosure, is hockey the hardest sport you've ever called when it comes to play-by-play?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would probably describe it as the most challenging to call live because in the pace. I always describe calling hockey games the pace of basketball, but with more numbers coming on and off the ice, right? So you have to be prepared for a line change in which, you have a new 10 people on the ice, right?
Line change, yep.
Exactly. So, and it's not like basketball where there's a stoppage and you can see that substitution happen. You got to be on it, which makes it more challenging. And I don't know how many broadcasters use a spotter in hockey because it's too quick, but you'd almost need it, right? Because you have to know who's coming in and out. So I think in terms of the actual watching and calling the game, hockey is the most challenging just because of that. I think baseball is probably one of the most difficult to get ready for just because you have to have so much attention to the details, and a guy can have a 30-second at bat in one instance, and then in the 7th inning he can have a 4-minute at bat, and you have to be ready for both of those situations. But I would agree with you. I think hockey overall would be the most challenging sport.
That's why I just wanted to get your feedback. We lost Doc Emmerich to the booth this past week at the age of 74, and so that's why I wanted to bring the hockey part into it, being a puckhead here.
Yeah, well, the verbiage from Doc is always the thing that gets me, man. Whew.
Kidding. He's just calling Doc Roger. I mean, that's bottom line. Blatant plug and promo time for anybody that wants to keep an eye on what's going on at San Jose State. Game days during the week. How do they do it?
Game days during the week. Our San Jose State social media accounts are tremendous at pushing out content, specifically the San Jose State Spartan football account. They do a lot of great videos. They do insider stuff. And in this particular year, when we're not allowed to have fans and we're really kind of removed from everything else, that's the best way to follow it. And obviously, there are ways to watch the game on TV. We like people that listen to the radio, but the best way is to follow the San Jose State football Twitter account. They put out what the kids call fire content on Twitter.
You ain't kidding. Fire content on Twitter. Justin Allegri. Justin, thanks for hanging out with us, and thanks for the education and pulling back the curtain on the Mountain West here on the OSG and on CFB and being one of our X Factor interviews for the week. Good to see you. Have a good call. May everything stick to the disc so it can be preserved for all. Have a good call this weekend against New Mexico.
Hey, thanks for including me. I appreciate it.
When we come back, the OSG on CFB continues. Stick and stay. We'll be right back.
The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. Install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, and lacrosse. What are you waiting for? Get the OSG Sports app today.
One played major college football. The other just thought about playing. It's the Stereo J-Dubs with John Wood and John Wilkerson.
So, J-Dub, the Big Ten is back, and they came back in a big way. First of all, Ohio State's Ohio State.
Yeah, and I said last week on the show that I didn't trust Ohio State to have the ranking that they had, but boy, they proved me wrong. Justin Fields came out and just led the Buckeyes all over the Cornhuskers. So kudos to Ohio State.
Yeah, I guess Justin Fields is making his impression on the Heisman Trophy voting committee, throwing for 2 touchdowns and almost a perfect afternoon, 20-21 for 276 and 2 touchdowns. So almost a perfect afternoon for Justin Fields. And, Trey Sermon, yardage-wise, wasn't that impressive, but Justin Fields, when he's carrying the ball a lot, Trey's just kind of the complementary piece.
Exactly. And we talked about how, Justin Fields was sitting back watching, the Trevor Lawrences and the Travis Etiennes of the world who are already on the Heisman watch and has not had a chance to showcase himself on the big stage. And Nebraska was the one that was fighting for Big Ten football. So this was a statement game. And he didn't put up like astronomical numbers, but he was so incredibly efficient on Saturday that, this offense, might be out running through the Big Ten this year. And I think we're going to see a lot out of Fields. Then you also have Garrett Wilson, who pulled in almost 130 yards receiving. So, if the Buckeyes get rolling, watch out.
And then you got Michigan, who discovered a quarterback in Joe Milton. And they really, it was almost a dominant effort against Minnesota, a Gopher team that many thought would be the team coming out of the West. And they still may be. To go into Minneapolis like that and get an impressive win where people are kind of sketchy about what this Michigan team would look like, they made a statement as well.
And then, we talked about before about how Minnesota and Wisconsin are literally the grind-out teams, and Minnesota has found another running back, Mohamed Ibrahim, right? He had, 140, 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. That worries me about the Michigan run defense. If they get to some of these other teams with a strong rush defense and if they can't stop them on the ground, what are they going to do? But, obviously the Milton was running that Wolverine offense, and if you can put up 50 points a game, then he doesn't necessarily worry about giving up, $150 to a running back on the ground.
Well, I wasn't too worried about Michigan's pass rush because that front seven was in Tanner Morgan's face throughout the game. Got him 5 times. So Michigan's defense, yeah, they can show up the run game. They may be okay, and that's going to be fun to watch Michigan and Ohio State on down the line toward the end of the year for probably a chance for the title game, the Big Ten title game. But the two big stories, first of all, J-Dub, Rutgers is 1-0.
And that's pretty impressive, coming out, especially going up against Michigan State. Rutgers doesn't normally beat Michigan State, and they beat them handily. You got to think about, Lombardi had, 3 touchdowns, but it just wasn't enough up against this Rutgers defense. And, they were pretty consistent overall. I mean, Rutgers didn't score anything in the third quarter, but they won every other quarter on the way to an 11-point victory. So that's a score coming out of the Big Ten that really impressed me. Surprised me, rather.
Well, Greg Schiano's back. He's brought the Jersey toughness back to Rutgers, and it showed in that game. That was a different Rutgers team than I've seen in the past, and they've been god-awful. And, hey, that's three cheers for the Scarlet Knights.
Well, you bring up Schiano. I mean, he almost came to Tennessee, right? And that was the hire that I wouldn't necessarily have minded. The rest of the Vol Nation did, but I knew what kind of toughness that Schiano has, and yeah, you're right. He brought that back to the Scarlet Knights, and they really showed it to the Spartans on Saturday. And
remember, Rutgers was the it team in the mid 2000s. At least that's what ESPN told us. But now the question is, at this point in the season, who's the favorite for National Coach of the Year? Is it Greg Schiano or is it Sam Pittman?
I don't think that you can give Schiano the credit for after one game. I still think Sam Pittman, what he's doing in Arkansas, especially since we have to play you next week, that's going to be interesting in Fayetteville as the Volunteers go down there. So we'll see how that goes. But my money's on Pittman right now.
Of course, Indiana with the craziest ending, defeating Penn State by 36-35 when Michael Penix stretched his 6'3" frame as much as he could to get to the pylon on the 2-point conversion to win it in the first overtime. And it was an impressive win for Indiana. We talked to Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, earlier on the College Football X. He was in shock it was upheld.
Well, we talked before we got on the air about the ball stretching, across the plane of the goal line and not seeing enough to overturn it. We've seen a lot of that this year in college football as well as in the pros, where these guys just stretch out and you've got 5 officials on the field and you don't see enough to overturn it. I mean, that's a crazy way to lose a ball game for 8th-ranked Penn State. But at the same time, you look at what Indiana did to be in that position to win, and I credit the Hoosiers on that one. They did enough. And, as a football player, you never want to say that it comes down to one play, that's how you lose. Like, I never blamed an official. I never blamed one play. It's body of work. And, Indiana stayed in the game, and, Penix kept them in the ballgame. Especially, and then you have to think about Penn State, Sean Clifford, right? Sean Clifford, had 3 touchdowns in the air, and he was a leading rusher on the ground. So, I think the Nittany Lions will be fine.
Of course, the 2 storylines from last week, Indiana and Rutgers, they meet this Saturday in Rutgers, and that'll be. We'll see who comes out of that firestorm. I really like Rutgers in this game because they're showing some Jersey toughness, J-Dub.
Yeah, and I also like Rutgers here. I think Penn State came out flat. Right? They didn't score multiple touchdowns until they got to the fourth quarter. So I think that Indiana was kind of stayed in the ball game. I think if they're not careful, a team that blew out Michigan State might blow out the Hoosiers. And I think, where are they playing it? Is it at Rutgers?
Yeah, it's at Rutgers.
Yeah, if they're having to travel to Rutgers, I think Indiana's in trouble.
Of course, Penn State might be staring 0-2 start might be staring down an 0-2 start because they host Ohio State on Saturday night. And
that's an L. That's a loss.
And wow, a promising year could go right down. We're talking about the sprint aspect of the Big Ten season this year.
Right.
And Penn State stumbling out of the blocks with an 0-2 start will be almost too much to overcome.
I agree. And then we also have Michigan State on Saturday, actually on Halloween. So I think that's also going to be an interesting game, even though I think Michigan runs away with it.
Exactly. And elsewhere, Minnesota goes to Maryland. I think Minnesota is going to rebound in that one. Purdue and Illinois. Purdue, I like Purdue in that one. Northwestern and Iowa is kind of interesting. Couple of teams that are just physical and strong, and I tend to like the Hawkeyes. And then Nebraska hosting Wisconsin. Can you tell the two teams apart? One has a W on their helmet. The other one has an N. Same color scheme.
Same playing style. I think that's going to be one of those, and one of those games where I think it's going to come down to who makes the fewest mistakes. As that sounds kind of trite, but I think that Nebraska's coming off a loss. Wisconsin's coming off a pretty good statement win. I think I think I like the Badgers in that one, but at the same time, you can't look past the Cornhuskers. They're not a bottom tier team. So we'll see what they got to come out of there. But I do remember you talking about Northwestern and Iowa. I remember the only time I went to Evanston when I played at Wake Forest, Northwestern actually put the smack down on us. So yeah, I tend to get the hives when I think about going into Evanston. And so thankfully this game is going to be in Iowa at Kinnick Stadium. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Northwestern's going to come out of that game. I do believe.
A few games in the ACC intrigue me. First of all, Virginia hosting North Carolina in the oldest rivalry of the South. So how physical and fundamentally sound Virginia is, especially defensively. North Carolina is coming off that huge win over NC State. Quite honestly, I didn't see that coming. I thought that front seven from State was much better than they showed against Carolina. 2 Carolina backs going for over 100 yards. But Virginia is not going to. I mean, they're tough and physically demanding. They're the type of defense that can wear down that explosive North Carolina offense.
Well, you got to look at Mack Brown. Mack Brown's coming off a loss at Florida State. You never want to play a team like North Carolina coming off of a loss. I think they looked at the North Carolina State game as a winnable game, and they made it a statement game. I think Sam Howell did a really good job running that offense for North Carolina, and I didn't necessarily see it coming, but I wasn't surprised either, especially with NC State losing their quarterback the week before. They got hit in the mouth early and could never recover. And I don't think the Wolfpack is a team that can pull back from being down. So I think that was not necessarily a surprise win, but I guess I'm not going to say okay with it, but I think because I had picked the Tar Heels in it anyway. But you look at Virginia, you look at their record, they may say 1-4, right? But that's a deceptive 1-4. They're still a very fundamentally sound team. Their defense tackles well. They're fast. And I think it'll be a good test for the Tar Heels. It's not going to be a runaway. It's going to be in Charlottesville. So I think that's going to be a game that's going to be intriguing on Saturday night.
Yeah, and another one's Louisville and Virginia Tech. Look, Louisville, after starting off 1-4, they got a nice win over Florida State at home. They hadn't been at home in a while. Now they host Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, talented football team, has really been racked with COVID-19 issues. They're really just getting back to full strength, and they're coming off a loss too. But Virginia Tech may just have enough. Because, I mean, again, it's Virginia Tech. Their special teams has been outstanding. And to get by Louisville, but I think it's a struggle.
I agree. I think Malik Cunningham coming back from Louisville is going to be a boon for their offense. But I do think Virginia Tech, who has been playing tough physical football all year, being down 26 players at one point in time thanks to COVID, I think the Hokies have the edge here, even though it's being played in Cardinal Stadium. I think the line is Virginia Tech by 3.5. I think they're definitely going to cover. I'm saying by a touchdown. So it's going to be a tough game, but I think the Hokies come out on top.
Name your score with Notre Dame against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's defense has been not very good, let's just say.
Well, the line is Notre Dame by 20, and the over/under is 57. So I think I'm going to go with the Madden offense of the Fighting Irish in that one.
Yes, it's setting up the showdown with Clemson as they take on Boston College. If you're thinking Clemson is looking ahead to Notre Dame, just don't think that. Too many good veterans on that team. But
Dabo Swinney's not going to let that happen anyway.
No. But there's fans out there that are going to say that. But Boston College, I mean, they're an interesting. This is not your Tom O'Brien, your Jeff Jagodzinski, your Steve Adazio BC Eagles. They've got some playmakers out there, And Jeff Heffley, I think, has done a great job of kind of turning things around and giving the Eagles a more of a modern look.
Yeah, because you look at Jerkovic at quarterback. I mean, he's got over 1,600 yards passing. I mean, they're a quiet 4-2 right now. You have David Bailey on the ground, Zay Flowers on the edge. Isaiah McDuffie on defense is leading the team. I think like 70 tackles. So I mean, this is a quietly skilled Eagles team. I don't think this is going to be a runaway, but I do believe that Trevor Lawrence is going to play more than 2 quarters in this one, and I think they're going to take down Boston College by at least 21 points.
And let's face it, Clemson had an off game against Syracuse.
Off game.
Well, I mean, Syracuse really had a couple of big plays. It was the pick six and the Rex Culpepper's long touchdown pass, but people were worried about lackluster performance by Clemson in that game, and it somewhat was compared to Clemson standards, but they still put up over 40 points, and Trevor Lawrence had impressive numbers, and so Travis Etienne, maybe he's a little off a little bit, but this is a resilient veteran team that when you can overcome a subpar performance like that, I mean, what are you worried about?
Exactly. And you think of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, if I'm a Clemson fan, I'm worried about him leaving this year to go into the NFL draft. But if the Jets were going to take him at number 1, I'd stay at Clemson. That's just me. So, I mean, regardless of whether or not I win the national championship or not, I don't want to play for New York. So I think that Clemson, depending on the way things play out, they might see Trevor Lawrence for another year.
Yeah, and I talked to Bill Shanks earlier today on his show about the dream of having Trevor Lawrence in a Falcons uniform. That would be a Falcon fan's dream. You like your alma mater at Syracuse?
At Syracuse, yeah. I think Wake's going to put up some numbers. I think the line is like 11 points. I think it's going to be closer than the score says, because Syracuse always plays Wake Forest hard. But it's in the Carrier Dome. I like Wake Forest by at least 7.
Let's move on to the Big 12, where the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and how impressive were they against Iowa State? That was a defensive battle in Big 12 standards, even in normal college football standards. And Iowa State wanted to do that. They wanted to turn it into a defensive struggle, which they did. But Spencer Sanders and Chuba Hubbard are just that good on the offensive end, and the Cowboys get the win.
And Iowa State, had Breece Hall with almost 190 yards rushing on the ground. I mean, that was a slobber knocker if I'd ever seen one. Sanders and Hubbard, that tandem is probably the best tandem in the Big 12. Yeah, that was a big statement win for Gundy.
Again, we keep the theme with quarterback running back combos. That seems to be the theme in college football this year. That was the stretch for Oklahoma State of a brutal 4-game stretch that will determine if they're the best team in the Big 12. Now they host Texas at Boone Pickens Stadium in Stillwater, and Texas got the win last week. We know how mediocre Tom Herman's team is right now.
That's putting it nicely.
It's putting it nicely, yes. And we've talked about the offensive firepower that OSU has, but their defense is better than expected. And to handle that Iowa State team like that, they're going to handle Texas. And that's no matter how good Sam Ehlinger is.
Yeah, it's a home game for them. Hubbard and Sanders are just way too strong in this one. And one thing I will say about not a lot of crowds and not a lot of fans in the stands. As an offensive lineman, I get to hear all the lineman calls. So it's really cool to hear, Mike 55, and hearing their sign-offs and their signs. So I'm looking forward to that in this game. I think that this game is going to be won at the line of scrimmage. And if Texas can't stop Chuba Hubbard, Sam Ehlinger will not be a factor. That's just my call right now. If Chuba Hubbard runs ragged, Sam Ehlinger will not be able to bring him back.
Now, for Oklahoma State, after Texas, they go to Kansas State, and then after that, they're at Oklahoma for Bedlam. So this is a brutal stretch for OSU. But if they go through this running the table, and it's a possibility, you can't deny them a berth in the championship game. They pretty much would clinch it, and they will go absolutely crazy in Stillwater if that happens.
Absolutely, and they deserve to be there. And I think K-State's playing West Virginia this weekend. West Virginia struggled against Kansas in the beginning last week, so I mean, that's a scary thing because Kansas is not good. I think K-State and West Virginia, that's going to be West Virginia's got the line right now. They're up 3.5, but I think K-State is going to win that in a runaway. And I think OSU K-State next week is going to be an amazing game. I think that's going to be probably one of the premier games of probably the season.
Pity poor Kansas, because Iowa State's going to take out their loss to OSU to the Jayhawks.
That's the way it always works.
TCU and Baylor, it's a nice Southwest Conference rivalry game. And Oklahoma and Texas Tech, will there be any defense played at all in that game on the West Texas Plains? That has the potential to put up a basketball score. In fact, we'll wonder if there is a college basketball season, whether Oklahoma and Texas Tech will put up as many points on the hardwood as they did on the gridiron.
Well, the over-under in that game is 69 points. So I think you're right. And you bring up basketball. That's the only thing I'm going to say about basketball is that one thing that made me feel good as a Kansas fan, they released the Kansas basketball schedule. So that made me take a brief respite on the fact that how Kansas sucks as a football team. So I will say that I got a little bit of a boon this week. So there is that.
Yeah, well, Bill Self's more popular than Les Miles, that's for sure.
This is true.
Okay, to the SEC, Kentucky and Georgia. Kentucky has got a Lex level defense. They do. They're that good, and they create turnovers. Offense, where is it? I mean, Terry Wilson it's just not the answer at quarterback, and there's just no weapons there for Mike Stoops to brag about. And Georgia's got they got the best defense, one of the best defenses in college football. Obviously, they'll be looking at their quarterback, Stetson
Bennett. Yep.
Stetson Bennett. Thank you. I couldn't think of his last name. And so that'll be he'll be under scrutiny with Georgia fans, but Georgia should win this one rather handily.
The thing I see about Kentucky outside of Terry Wilson, you've got Chris Rodriguez Jr. I mean, he's the running back. He's got like maybe 315, 320 yards on the ground this year and 55 carries. That's not a lot, but I mean, Kentucky has that defense has kept them in ball games. Obviously, whooped up on Tennessee and some other teams. Took Auburn to the limit. You got to think about how that team is ready. That team defensively is ready, but they will have zero answer for Kearis Jackson. I'm sorry, he's a matchup nightmare for Georgia, and if Bennett can keep feeding him the ball, I mean, Georgia's going to win this in a runaway.
And Mississippi State takes on Alabama, and after week one, we were kind of looking ahead of this game, thinking, okay, this is with Mike Leach's success. This could be one of those intriguing matchups that everybody looks forward to. Mike Leach and Nick Saban actually matching wits, but this game just looks like another Alabama blowout.
It is, and Mac Jones actually has more passing yards this year than Trevor Lawrence does, believe it or not. So
I believe it.
And I think as a Tennessee fan, there's always a chance in the third Saturday in October. And that's the one game I actually paid attention to last week coming home. And, I cried into my Gatorade as I was driving home because, there was a chance, and then Alabama just ran away. If you have between Mac Jones and Najee Harris, and the loss of Jalen Waddle didn't slow them down at all. I feel, my thoughts go out to Jalen and that nasty injury coming out of the end zone. But Alabama's offense is just scary good. It's being played in Bryant-Denny. Yeah, the Pirate will have no answer for the Crimson Tide.
But to me, the game that's going to be the most entertaining, at least potentially, is Arkansas and Texas A&M in College Station. They're playing in College Station for the first time since 1991, 29 years. I was at that game in College Station in 1991. A&M had a quarterback by the name of Bucky blankety blank Richardson, who ran wild against Arkansas's defense. And that was Arkansas's last Southwest Conference game too, as I recall. But we all know about Arkansas. They're 2-2, looked 1,000 times better they have in the past. Texas A&M looks like they've kind of righted some things. Kellen Mond is comfortable now. Jimbo Fisher looks a little more relaxed now, although you wouldn't know it if you saw him on the sidelines.
He's a walking heart attack waiting to happen. He's so stressed on the sidelines.
Exactly. Arkansas's defense has been the difference. Barry Odom has done some great things on that side of the ball. A&M is doing okay offensively. They're doing enough to win. They've had a couple explosive games, but I really love this matchup. This is a game that, if Arkansas wins, anything can happen, in my opinion. If Texas A&M wins, it might be enough to catapult them for a good stretch in the season.
Well, you got to think about Arkansas. They've hired Sam Pittman. I thought that was a great hire. And then I like Barry Odom at Missouri. And then they hired him when on Pittman's staff. I thought that was a great hire. And then you get Felipe Franks. Arkansas's got the right pieces in place. And then you look at, wide receiver Treylon Burks, who's having a great season. Arkansas's got the pieces there ready to take it to the next level. I don't think this is the game that happens. I think Kellen Mond and Isaiah Spiller, again, the quarterback, running back tandem, I think they're going to be too much down the stretch for the Razorbacks to handle. The line is 12 points. I think it's going to be closer than that. I'm saying TAMU by 7. But I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's probably going to be the best game of the weekend in the SEC.
Yeah, you too. It's good to see them. It's nice to see those two play every year. It's an old Southwest Conference rivalry that gets me going. But now that they're playing in College Station, they usually play this game in Dallas at Jerry World. But now it's in College Station. It has that old school feel to me, and it'll be special.
Well, one thing I do want to talk about is the LSU Auburn game. And how about the true freshman, TJ Finley? TJ Finley looked really, really good running the LSU offense and left people going, Miles Brennan who? I mean, yeah, he's hurt. I understand that. But is he going to lose his spot to a true freshman?
Well, let's see how he does against Auburn, because Auburn's defense is not the issue, really, with that team. That's a stout defense. And we'll see how he does, how Finley does against the other Tigers. But this is a game of two very underachieving programs this year. And I think, Auburn's been so lucky this year. They've had some calls have gone their way. It's almost as like, what was it, in 2013 when they had the kick six and the game against Georgia where they had the prayer Jordan-Air. Those were at the end of the season, and so the clock ran out on that kind of craziness. Yeah, this is happening at the beginning of the season, and come on, the law of averages have got to catch up. There can't be some craziness that goes Auburn's way in this one.
Yeah, because Arkansas should have beat them 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
They did lose to South Carolina. When you lose to the Game Chickens, that's a bad sign. And then Ole Miss, barely beat them in the Lane Train. So, I mean, and they lost to Georgia. So, yeah, they're 3-2 right now. But then they're stretched. They had LSU this weekend, then at Mississippi State, then, home against Tennessee, then at Alabama, and at home against Texas A&M. So they've got not necessarily a soft schedule. They've got 2 winnable games in 3 games that they're not going to be able to play their mediocre style against TAMU, Alabama, and LSU this weekend and get away with it. I think they've been lucky based on the teams they've played. But, yeah, Georgia embarrassed them. And, South Carolina beating them by 8 points. That's an embarrassment if you think about it, for an Auburn fan anyway. But, yeah, I think, they need to right the ship. I think Gus really needs to figure out what the heck's going wrong in Auburn and right that ship, because I don't want to say lucky, but they've been lucky. They've had things go their way, and I think that's getting ready to end this weekend if they don't play well.
Missouri and Florida. Florida's had the COVID-19 issues on campus. But
Dan Mullen was that full stadium.
Technically, you could have one. Missouri comes in with a nice win last week, and Missouri is starting to really play a lot better. And you kind of think with Florida's COVID issues, if Missouri's going to sneak one at the Swamp, this would be their opportunity.
Yeah, I say it. I've said it multiple times. I love Connor Bazelak at quarterback.
I do too.
I think he's just a serviceable, good guy. I think he's a freshman. He's learning as it goes, and he's got a running back like Larry Roundtree on the ground. He's got weapons like Jalen Knox. I think I like Missouri. I really do like the team. And even though Tennessee beat them early in the season, I think that's because Bazelak was trying to figure things out. I don't think it was because Tennessee was better than Missouri. But they're 2-2 right now, and people thought when they got rid of Barry Odom, right? And, I think it was Eli Drinkwitz in there now, right?
Yeah, Eli Drinkwitz.
And, I think this is going to be a winnable game for Missouri. Yeah, the line is 13 points for Florida, but I think the COVID issue is going to be a problem for Dan Mullen. This game's going to be a lot closer than advertised, even though it's going to be at Ben Hill Griffin. I think Florida could be on upset watch right now. I really do.
And then there's Ole Miss and Vanderbilt.
Oh. That's poor Vanderbilt. I think there's something going on in Nashville. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I can't even. As a Tennessee fan, I normally like to say, we're the best team in the state. If I pick on my Vanderbilt fans, but I don't know what's happening there. It just. I really think that the coaching staff, I don't know if they bought into they're just going to lose everything. It's just like they don't compete. They've only scored 7 points the last 2 weeks, 14 total. And it's just I feel really bad for the Commodores because when they're saying anchor down, yeah, it's anchor can't get back up again. And it's just, it's a sad time in Nashville. I think the lane train's going to run all over the Commodores.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sunbelt game of the week there is Coastal Carolina going to Georgia State. Georgia State could, they've had, they score a lot of points. Coastal's got a really good defense. I watched that game last week against Georgia Southern, and they really clamped it down in the second half. But Coastal's going into a hostile territory, into the former Turner Field, which is now Georgia State Stadium. Yep. This might, if Coastal is going to stub their toe, this might be one of the times.
Center Park is always an interesting place to play. Georgia State right now 2-2 on the season, but Grayson McCall is just too good at quarterback, and I think that the Chanticleers are going to have a good game. I don't think this is going to be a trip up for them. The line is Coastal only by 2.5 points, but the over/under is 61.5 points. So I think the Fun Belt will continue to be the Fun Belt, and I think Coastal is going to earn that number 20 ranking in the nation. I think they'll come out of this with a statement win. They have to if they want to prove to their naysayers that, what is a Sun Belt team being here, but they're 5-0. And I think they come out of this 6-0 looking just as good as they have all season. I think that's going to be a fun game to watch. Coastal, I'm just so happy for them. They, being a smaller team in my area up here in North Carolina, South Carolina, and, they were awful last year. And to have turned around so quickly, yeah, my money's on the Chanticleers.
And Cincinnati Bearcats and the top 10, the adopted team of Phil Canner,
yes,
takes on Memphis. And Memphis is a formidable opponent. Cincinnati does it with they're tough physically. They play that almost that old Big Ten type of football, which is totally, they go against the grain, I guess, the way football is being played right now. But Cincinnati is that team that many think of. There's going to be a group of 5 team that sneaks into the Final Four, which is going to be very difficult now. Cincinnati would be that team. They got to have an impressive win over Memphis because Memphis is a known commodity.
Yeah, but I still think the Bearcats come out of this game unscathed. I think Cincinnati's.
Too.
Memphis lost the coach. Norvell went down to Florida State. They lost Antonio Gibson. They just lost all the weapons. Memphis is a shadow of what team they used to be. But yeah, the Bearcats come out of this absolutely unscathed.
Any final thoughts, J-Dub?
I'm interested to see the Boise State game this week. I think that game's going to be. They came in there. They won last week. They're 25th in the nation now. So we'll see how. I think they're going up against Air Force. Yep. At USAF Stadium, Falcon Stadium. So it'll be an interesting game to see because I think Hank Bachmeier at quarterback is a very, very good quarterback. He had 268 yards and 3 touchdowns last weekend. So that's a game that's on my radar. But go Broncos in the Smurf turf.
And of course, Air Force coming off the loss to San Jose State. So they'll be raging mad as the Broncos come in to the Air Force Academy. So that's it for the Stereo J-Dubs. We'll be back next week, God willing.
God willing. Yeah, Tennessee's got the week off, so I don't have to worry about coming here, all tears in my beer. So I'll definitely be back.
That's good news, but he'll probably still have orange of some shade on, I'm sure, on Saturday. Jon Nelson ties a bow on this edition of the College Football X when we come back.
Like the voice you're hearing on this podcast? It could be on your production too. Just go to goodpipesvo.com. That's goodpipesvo.com and reach out to Steve Henderson on the Contact Us page. Go to the website, click on the Contact Us page, and then see what Steve's Good Pipes can do for your upcoming project.
Time to put a bow on yet another show. Thanks for hanging out with us for another round of the College Football X, our X Factors. Thanks again to Don Fischer, the play-by-play voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, Justin Allegri, the play-by-play voice of San Jose State, to give us the lay of the land in two new conferences that are starting play and have already started play as they make the race to the bowl season and the college football playoffs. Thanks again to you for hanging out with us. For Don, for Justin, for the Stereo J-Dubs, I'm just John. Play it safe, everybody. Enjoy the games.
Thanks for listening to the College Football X. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. And enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.